Okay, it's 2 minutes after. Ken, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hey, can you hear me there, Michael? Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
hey,
we hear
everybody.
you.
Hey, thanks for joining our webinar today. It's great that we were able to put this presentation together for you guys, and you guys could spend a few minutes of your day with us. We have a fantastic partnership here with Gluware, and I asked Michael Howe and his team to jump on this webinar with us and explain his product and how it ties back into the network, where then we can jump in and also help you guys with your network. And you've heard from me on buying and selling the telecom equipment, maintaining the telecom equipment. But what Gluware is, amongst other things, what they do is help you really discover what's in your network. And so I thought it was a great partnership that completed the circle. And I got with Michael and his team over there at Gluware, and I said, hey man, I think we can do this together. Why don't we try this? So here we are. And I'm going to turn it over to the expert here. I want to introduce Michael Howe. Michael, I'll take you away.
Great. Thanks very much, Ken. Pleasure to be on with you. And it's great to get introduced to your contacts and your customers there at WWS. You have a great reputation. So let's get rolling. The topic today is automating. It's about network automation from Gluware, and then understanding how we complement the maintenance and support provided by WWS. So with that, what we'll do is in this next slide here, want to just give you an advance notice that because when we mapped out the content, it really made sense to provide fairly in-depth demonstrations of what we can do. So we decided to break it up into a two-part series. So part one is today. I'll be giving you the Gluware overview, and we're going to cover something called Device Manager, which is all about discovering your network, discovering your devices, and then performing additional operations on those devices, as well as our OS Manager to automate operating system upgrades. So that's part one. Part two is going to be in a few weeks on Tuesday, June 8th. Please mark it on your calendar. And we're going to be covering our config drift and audit application, also our config modeling app, which is for intelligent configuration management. So today we're automating the read-only, although we're going to be performing operating system upgrades. And the next session will be more focused around automating network change and more active config management. So with that, we'll move on here. So very quick overview in terms of what we're going to cover today is just an introduction of what Gluware is, and just to understand some of the benefits and some of the use cases. I already described that we're going to be really covering a few components of Gluware, but we don't have time in this session to take a deep dive into the whole platform as mentioned. So we're going to focus on a few of the applications, and we'll dive pretty deep into those in a live demo. So from like elevator pitch or top level, what is Gluware? We are a platform for intelligent network automation. When you think about your network and you think about how it's managed and how it could be, it's challenging. If you speak to someone in network operations, where I worked for many years, you're going to hear, there's a lot of complexity in the network. There's a lot of, you have multi-vendor usually. If you don't have multi-vendor, you have multiple platforms from the same vendor. So ultimately is kind of like multi-vendor. You have different series of releases of those products. You have most of your configuration done in command line, and you have configurations that have what we refer to as like technical debt or kind of config bloat, because a lot of things have been added into those configurations over time. And there's not a lot of time that people actually go through and scrutinize each line of the config and do cleanup and really take out what shouldn't be there. But in terms of operating the network, operations struggles with, keeping the network up, keeping it reliable. And then they have, if you're a public company or if you have compliance, you have to fall under, or governance, you have to keep the network in policy. We know more than ever, security is top of mind for most IT organizations. How do we keep the network secure from an authentication standpoint, from access lists, from many things we have in our arsenal to protect the network? And then how do we enable change, where when we get a change request, let's say it's to add a new location or change a QoS parameter or change an access list, how quickly can operations respond and get that change implemented in the network? And we're going to take a look and talk about quite a few use cases, but Gluware helps across all these things as a pure software layer that supports multi-vendor, multi-domain, domains like LAN, WAN, your data center, your campus. And we've gone multi-cloud. So now we automate things like AWS and others, and we'll go into that. What you're going to learn about Gluware is that we are differentiated in the automation space because generally when you hear automation, some people in their mind think right to programming in scripts and some level of users that have a deep level of expert to build scripting and automation kind of from scratch. We're an automation product that delivers a lot right out of the gate, so you don't have to build. In fact, you don't have to be a programmer at all to use and automate with Gluware. And we'll go into how we do that, but basically through our orchestration engine, we are able to deliver what is called intent-based automation that gives you the ability to declare your intended state of a configuration, and Gluware will do the pre-checks, implement the change, do the verification to ensure your intended state is met. And so Gluware, our differentiation really is in the fact that we can automate the network you have today. We don't require you to deploy a new solution, a new deployment, a new configuration, or start from scratch, net new build of a config. We'll automate the so-called brownfield of what you have today, but also can automate some of the most modern architectures out there, and we're going to talk about that. And then it's when Gluware thinks about network automation, and when you think about how you can use Gluware, it's about lifecycle management of the network. So it's about definitely deployment of new sites and new things going in, but it's about the day two changes and so forth. So we're going to talk about how Gluware is used for ongoing assessment, ongoing troubleshooting, ongoing performance tuning, and ongoing remediation and other things. So to jump into it a bit more, I kind of refer to this as like our marketecture. It's not really a full-on architecture slide, but what I want to point out is that Gluware has and runs on what is referred to as our intelligent orchestration engine. This is really where the intellectual property resides of Gluware, and this is where we are processing and treating the network as data, right? So to describe a little bit of what we do in the orchestration engine, to treat everything as data, we have an adapter layer that enables us to speak down to the networking devices, the things you already have in your network. So routers and switches and firewalls and load balancers. And for each vendor operating system we support, we write a vendor adapter that allows us to read and write to that particular operating system. Everything we read into our system, we wrap in a data model. So by using data models, we're able to convert, low-level CLI that is not, machine readable. We wrap it in data models, which make it machine readable and make it programmable, where we really treat the network, the infrastructure as code. You might have heard that buzzword in the industry, infrastructure as code, is becoming a big thing. Gluware is able to apply that approach to your current network. So we apply data modeling, and then we can apply intelligent automation if it's automating reads and discoveries and interrogation of the network state, as well as implementing changes on the network. So if we go up one level above our orchestration engine, we deliver a suite of applications. So this was where I was talking about, instead of having to go, learn Python or, learn Ansible, which is, playbooks and Python modules. And instead of having to kind of go become a developer or, scripter, Gluware delivers out of the box the ability to do inventory and drift and audit and operating system upgrades and config management and numerous other capabilities you're going to see throughout the live demonstration. So that suite of applications that we deliver give you the ability to automate through a UI and have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you're going to do and get results right away. Because what we're realizing and what customers really share, it's about time to value. If you have to implement a change and it's going to take you 3 weeks to plan it and another 4 or 5 weeks to test it and then develop it, if it's going to take you months to get something done versus Gluware delivers something you can get done in, days or hours, it really is a fundamental change in the way you can operate your network. But Gluware is not what we refer to in the industry as prescriptive. We don't tell you how. We just enable you with a platform to do it in the right way. At the top layer, The customer brings to us their configuration policies, their audit policies, their compliance requirements, anything that they want can be ingested into the system. And that's really powerful because that's, again, how we can help you to automate what you have today. Now, to address some of the bullets on the right, we have two main offerings. Gluware Pro is our SaaS offering that runs out of AWS, and you just install a lightweight secure gateway on your network, and that enables Gluware to reach down through the gateway and communicate with your network devices. Or we have something called Gluware Enterprise, which is delivered as virtual machines, and it is very flexible. It can reside, on-prem in your data center. You can run it in your cloud. You can run it in private cloud. We'll help you with, really many different architectures that you can support. Both are highly scalable systems, although Gluware Pro today, we cap it at 2,000 devices. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And Gluware Enterprise, we're going to tens of thousands of devices, and we don't have a scale limitation on our architecture today. And if you have any questions about scale and things, we have numerous very large customers with the 20 and going to 50,000 and beyond network devices in a single system. So that's powered by our multi-engine architecture, enables us to implement changes and do things like reads and troubleshooting in parallel. And it's very flexible. So let's get into it a bit more and see how you use Gluware. I talked about the suite of applications. One of the things you're going to see as we jump into the demo, we have a very rich dashboard framework, which allows you to see what's happening with the information underlying in your network. So this is really the visualization side, or kind of the reporting side, to see number of devices or number of operating systems and what's happening, what's scheduled, who's on the system. Device Manager is really the first landing spot for taking action in your network in terms of like doing some work. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time on that in the session today. You can see a lot of vendor logos here. We're at over 30 operating systems and growing. We can onboard operating systems pretty quickly. If you're a WWS customer or have a relationship with them, we don't have an exact one-for-one mapping of our vendor support with theirs. That's primarily because we don't generally run in cable related networks, and we are definitely have an enterprise focus over a service provider focus. And so there's a few, if you look at the WWS offering in Gluware, there's a lot of overlap, but there's some platforms they have that we don't, and vice versa. Again, if there's market demand and there's a need, we can onboard new vendor adapters very quickly. So moving on is after you've inventoried your network, oftentimes the next application you're going to use is called config, drift, and audit. The drift function allows you to see what's changing on your network and identify change, and then speed troubleshooting and really start to eliminate the manual and undocumented changes that are happening. Audit is a full-blown audit engine, which allows you to define rules of permitted and forbidden commands. Again, if it's your standard company policy, or if it's related to a third-party compliance like PCI, DSS, HIPAA, NIST, or some other government, governance body. So another one we're going to demo today is OS Manager. OS Manager automates upgrades, downgrades, patches, these sort of things. The process to upgrade or downgrade most devices is a painful one, and there's a lot of points of failure you can run into. So Gluware is kind of taking all that pain away, enables you to automate the transfer of the file as well as the execution of the upgrade with verification, with a lot of pre-testing and checking and post-verification. We're going to show you that. Config modeling, we sometimes refer to it as our superpower. Config modeling is a really fundamentally game-changing way to manage configurations, because again, we are transforming vendor CLI, which is low-level commands, and we wrap it in data modeling, and we're able to break it down on a per feature basis. Like some examples of the features you see here. If you're on a Cisco and you do a show run and you get a dump of everything, Gluware breaks it down into modular pieces like your banner and your DNS and your SNMP and your AAA, and then we can treat those as policy. So we have an intelligent way to automate as many of the features in your entire configuration, or as little as possible, right, as you need. So this means you can start with kind of, let's say, the low-hanging fruit. Let's say you're upgrading to SNMP v3, or you have a AAA update to roll out, or a QoS policy, you can automate just that with Gluware, or you can automate your entire configuration. So really quite flexible. Keep hitting the wrong button here. All right. So moving on, tying all these things together, we offer something called workflows, and we also have something called custom scripts. This is where, when you have things that are repeated by operations on a common basis, maybe common changes in the network, or common troubleshooting, whatever it may be around design and operating and planning and troubleshooting, we can operate the full sequence kind of end to end and give your operational users a guided workflow with guardrails or whatever constraints that you want to put on. So workflows are quite powerful. And then last but not least, API integrations are more important than ever. And so Gluware can help to make calls out to systems. Gluware has a published API we call Glue API, Glue API, which allows external systems to interface with us programmatically. So if you want Gluware to update something in ServiceNow, like an ITSM, or if you want to take devices that are in an external system and push them into Gluware to manage, all that can be done programmatically. So with that, that's kind of an intro to the suite of apps as you kind of think about how you use Gluware. This slide's a little bit busy, so maybe I'll annotate on it to just make it. And again, I don't annotate a lot, so let me see how well this goes. What I'll point out is when Gluware, and Gluware is in this middle layer here. So we sit in the automation and orchestration layer. And what do we automate? Generally the network, right? So what oftentimes when we talk to customers, either we get them in a POC or a trial or something, and they share with us the vendors that they use and the operating systems, and they can even use Gluware to capture that. We're going to show you that, but usually we're starting here, what we refer to as the CLI driven infrastructure, because chances are you have a lot of this in your network with Cisco and Juniper and Aruba and on and on. And so with this, we're able to really kind of map what you have in your network to what we already support today. And we're able to do turnkey automation on these vendors. And again, we add more often and rapidly. In the past several years, there's been a pretty big push and rollout of software-defined technologies. And so the software-defined technologies introduce a controller element, and the controller speaks down to the network devices. But when you're managing the devices or even automating the devices, you automate through the controller. So that falls into the category of what we call API-driven infrastructure. So those of you who use Cisco may be familiar with their acquisition of Viptela, which is now the Cisco SD-WAN offering. Cisco, they have something called ACI in the data center. And Cisco Meraki, largely for kind of smaller or medium-sized offices, and there's kind of an SD-WAN flavor of that solution as well. But all these flavors, you connect through a controller, and then you interface with these devices. Well, what we've been expressed from our customer base over the years, especially in the last year and a half too, is while these provide enhanced management, they're not automation platforms. And sometimes making a change, like in Meraki, going and changing an IP helper, you got to navigate 3 tiers in to your VLAN and edit every single one manually. And there's a lot of operational tasks that are actually still very painful from a configuration management standpoint. And so we've introduced support for these platforms and automate them as well. In this case, it's an API, it's a vendor adapter that is speaking to them via API. And then if you followed Gluware at all, in Gluware 4.0, which we announced in December of last year, we announced our support for multi-cloud. So we have been automating cloud for quite a long time using native API calls that were more like one-off or custom implementations. We now have productized and onboarded the HashiCorp's Terraform. So Terraform is an infrastructure as code platform that then has various providers it supports. And so we've onboarded Terraform as an adapter in 3 of its providers in the public cloud space. So AWS, Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. And this enables us to automate multi-cloud. So it's very exciting for us. And more as your operations teams are tasked with, as more as moving to the cloud, you're going to want to ensure your configuration policies, the way you're maybe handling your VPN or your security configurations is consistent with your on-prem network. So these networks are managed differently, but there's a lot of similarities in networking rules, in like IP access list type security groups, and things like load balancing and others. And we have some great, initial stories of our support and rollout. So that's kind of, when you think about all of that, that's Gluware speaking southbound down to the network layer. Then we talk about Gluware speaking northbound, or maybe you could call it east-west, depending on your perspective. But northbound is really to other management plane components. I talked about ServiceNow as an ITSM, or maybe you're using Infoblox, IPAM, or maybe a Get repository for code or configuration, or NetBox as a source of truth, and on, right? And so with these, we have two different ways of interfacing with these, and both are through API. But one is by having the external source, the external component, leverage Gluware's published API. So that's this one right here. We publish an API. So if you want to, from NetBox, take your devices that you add there first and push them into Gluware, you can make an API call from NetBox to Gluware and populate devices, for example. So that's published using our published API. The other method is more of a custom API where we take our ability to onboard APIs rapidly and then do various things. Like, let's say you want IPAM integration in a specific workflow to go pull an IP address or a VLAN or something. We can make the call to an Infoblox or make the call to a NetBox, right? So we can initiate calls to external platforms to pull that data and simplify your end-to-end automation. So hopefully this gives you some perspective. It's a bit of a busy slide, I guess, but I think it tells the story well in terms of what we do. All right, so let me end. I think I just do that. Okay, whoops. Let's try to clear this annotations. Clear all. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what customers are doing with Gluware. And I'll run through these fairly quickly because we'd like to get into spend a lot of the time in the demonstration. Across the bottom are a handful of customers, just as examples that have become public references for us, from the largest financials in the world, like MasterCard, to some of the largest pharmas in the world, like Merck, First Bank, Terracon's an engineering firm, Acuity Insurance. And so what our customers generally do is they have needs around enhancing security. So we're doing things like automating ACLs and automating authentication, automating, even automating operating systems can fall into security. The customers want to minimize downtime and outages. So this is around, how do I kind of take the manual, maybe a fat fingering or manual cut and paste errors or things that can happen manually and reduce those, as well as having a system where Gluware is always doing pre-checks and post-checks to verify changes. The third is around enabling compliance. That's fairly self-explanatory, but it's about continually auditing for the compliance policy and then being able to remediate to ensure you're compliant. MasterCard shared a great use case where they were struggling with some legacy tools and scripts, and they're on the PCI DSS board, and they were struggling to remain compliant. It was such a challenge for their organization. Using Gluware, they're auditing their network every day and able to remediate, and they're very happy with their ability to remain compliant to beyond the minimal kind of specification. Accelerating cloud comes in a few different forms. For many years, Gluware has been automating the network to enable cloud, right? Either through direct connects or VPNs or automating QoS policies. But now we're automating and accelerating into the cloud, as I talked about with our Terraform support. Network optimization is really around where, things that need tuning related to, buffering and MTUs and QoS policies, and numerous other things in the network, can be inconsistently implemented. And so when you're able to automate and implement standard policies and make policies where you're ensuring standardization, you're going to achieve optimization, and that's really going to help your NetOps team. Number 6 there is around being more agile. This is really just about being responsive, where when a request comes in, your organization can facilitate the request in minutes or days or hours, not necessarily weeks and months, right? Some bigger changes may take longer, but when you're given the power of an automation platform, you can make those changes really rapidly. Network lifecycle management is about the whole thinking about it, kind of the life of a service or a device in your network, from when it first goes in to when you start getting notified it's going out of service. And this is a great one where it ties in well with WWS, is that sometimes the vendors are pressuring you to, upgrade those devices, 4 and 5 years into their life cycle. And you may not need to. It might be working just fine, but you want support and you want, the ability to swap that device if it somehow fails. And so just understanding the life cycle, from your vendor's perspective and what they're telling you, and what you can do with someone like WWS, where you can extend the life of your networking equipment and save money on that operation. So I think some of that's pretty critical. We talked about managing operating system upgrades. It's becoming more critical than ever. We're going to jump right into the next component here in the live demo around inventory and just understanding what's in your network. And then around 10 is around consolidation and integration. This is like where you can find cost savings and so forth. So with that, I think that's my last slide. We're going to jump into the demo now. So I need to stop share for a quick second. And if you like, you can post some questions in the chat. We'll kind of try to jump down there and get into those. I'm going to just make sure I'm able to sign into my Gluware systems. 1 second, please. Okay, no questions are being asked. Let me share my screen. Okay, and where we're going to start this demo is from the very top here, and I'm going to sign in here. So as I mentioned, that Gluware is pure software, and all our applications run from a web browser. So you don't have to install any software on your client. You can access all through a web browser. And I'm going to sign in here. When I sign into Gluware, it's going to bring me to the last place I was in the application. And here I'm dropped into my dashboard. So what I wanted to highlight just kind of quickly with dashboards is that it's super customizable. And what I've done here is just created a little customization to a dashboard I had, where this is my WWS webinar demo. I'm the only user on this system. Right now, there's no devices because I want to start from scratch and show you how easy it is to start automating. And then I have a little text widget here. I can say what's going on, what's coming up. Gluware just participated in Onug Spring. If you're interested, you can go check out some of that. You can pull in external widgets, you can pull in web pages, and you can even put in links to help your operational users when they sign in. So I'm going to move on because we'll come back to the dashboards, but let's jump into, I'll just say that the administrative tasks have been completed in this instance. So I'm not going to go through all that, but let me jump into Device Manager. What I will note is that Gluware is multi-user. So I'm signed in. And so everything I can do, my role-based access is tied to the way I've been defined in the system, right? So we have role-based access, and each user is assigned the ability to do specific things. Then it is also multi-tenant. Multi-tenant means you can have a different view for your LAN or your WAN or your data center, and you can assign different people to those. So this is a small lab network, and I only have 3 tenants in here, but I'm navigated to this particular tenant. In this tenant, there are no devices yet. So this is called our Device Manager app. And what you want to do in Device Manager, and let me move gotta get back to my desktop. What you want to do in Device Manager is add your devices. So you can add them one by one, you can import them, you can discover them, and you can push them via API. So I'm going to show a couple things here. I'm going to say, import. And so let's just say you have a list of devices. All we need is a name, an IP, and you can have the credentials in the file or handle them separately. I'm going to just drop in that CSV. It's just a list of devices. And here I have 20 devices that are now in the system. So it's in the system, but Gluware doesn't know anything about these devices except for what was in that spreadsheet. We haven't done anything with them yet. So what we're going to do in the first step here is select the devices and execute a device discovery. What happens in the device discovery, you're going to see the status here. Gluware is going to begin to interrogate all these devices. So let me double click in on one and I'll jump into the log here. And what you're going to see is that Gluware is going to figure out what kind of device it is. And then it's going to run a series of commands. So it's going to, it's going to look like, discover that this is a Cisco device. And then now it's going to do things like show version and show inventory. So it's looking at, again, show version. Gluware is very transparent in the sense that you can see everything Gluware is doing on a network device. And the text highlighted in green here is the output from the device. So it's very easy to kind of see exactly what's coming. Gluware is looking at the boot system, looking at the file structure. So it's interrogating this stuff and then pulling information out of that data. So for example, the serial number, the uptime, the SKU, right? So Gluware has interrogated the devices. And if you now look down into your grid of your devices, you can see there's 20 devices in the system. And then I have a column selector to determine what I want to see or hide. But I can see, multi-vendor network here, the IP addresses, the operating system versions, the name, serial numbers, SKUs, and more. Okay, so this is what we call your device discovery. So I just showed you one mechanism, which is, just dragging in a file and then Gluware interrogates those. Let's look at another one here. I'm going to highlight the CSR1 here, and I'm going to navigate over to network discovery. What network discovery enables me to do is give Gluware a seeded device and then tell it to log into that device and look at the ARP table, CDP table, or the LLDP table. I'll just use ARP in this case, and start to do an ARP crawl of the network, looking at all of the devices in the network. And then you have the option of then, importing them into Gluware. So let's kick this off real quick. This is called network discovery. And this is a really important component. And I'll tell you, pretty much all our customer engagements, they're always surprised when they run discovery because we find devices they thought were disconnected from the network. We find devices that they can't log into. We find devices that, that have network connectivity issues and other things. And so in the log here, it's telling you what it's doing. I'm going to switch over to the live, save the live result here. And you can see in this table, again, this is just a small network, but it is finding all of these devices and it's finding them via the ARP table, and it's interrogating them so to determine what they are. Now in this lab network, I have a few devices that are Linux servers, so it doesn't understand those. Actually, the credentials, if you look at the log here, the credentials are not the same on those Linux devices. So it's actually an authentication failure as Gluware tried to connect to those. So this is network discovery, and again, very, very powerful for you to take a look at. I will say that, what we've added to is if you have things that are not managed, like let's say I have servers or IP phones or whatever, you can exclude subnets in the search, and Gluware will then ignore those subnet sets as well. So that's a quick look at network discovery. Let's take a look at another fun feature here that we call Adhoc query. So with Adhoc query, I'm going to select a set of devices here. I'm selecting devices of the same family, which happen to be Cisco iOS. And I'm going to execute what we call an Adhoc query. An Adhoc query gives you the ability to check devices instead of going manually device by device. So we're going to query these devices, and we essentially query from two main sources. We query their configurations, or we configure the running operational state. So let's take a look. Let's say I'm troubleshooting a BGP issue. I want to say, are these devices configured for BGP? So I have a couple saved queries. I'm looking at the configuration, and I'm looking for the term router BGP. So this is a regex based query. I'm just putting simple text in here, and I hit run. It runs nearly instantly because we've already saved all the configurations in our database. And now if I dive into here, I can see that there's one match, and I can see this guy is configured for BGP, right? So this just dramatically helps you when it comes to troubleshooting and finding that needle in the haystack when you have to search across devices. You can search your configs, and do more. So now let's take the next step and look at an operational state. So now the source is going to be at each device, and we're going to log into each device and run a command. In this case, show IP BGP neighbors. We're looking for state equals established, and I'm going to run my query. These types of queries take a little longer because Gluware is now initiating connections to all those devices, running the command, parsing the output, right? It takes, maybe a minute or so. I can say that this particular router has 3 neighbors, and these each have 1. I actually know because each of these point to CSR1. If I was troubleshooting an issue, I can see here that CSR 155 does not have any BGP state established, and I could see, BGP is not active. So again, if I was troubleshooting, this could be my source to go and solve that. So Adhoc query is, again, a really powerful tool. It's not the only way you can do things, in terms of checking state or searching configs, but it's one of the methods very popular for troubleshooting. So let's cover one more thing here in this app, which is our integration with Cisco and our ability to talk to their API. So I have, let me select all the Cisco devices here, and I'm going to click on update support data. And I'm going to get a message saying that we're going to go talk to an external API. So this is one of the external API integrations we've built in to send data to Cisco to check end of life, end of sale, SmartNet status, and PCERT information. We also use API integration in our OS manager for upgrades. So this is quite handy. And again, this is also very useful for our partnership with WWS. So we're going to talk about a couple things here. So let's look at our results. So if I look at these devices and I scroll to the right, I can see the PCERT like advisories, critical, high, medium, end of life, end of sale, and then contract status. So most of my lab is virtual, but let's jump into this 3650 switch here. And let's look at the Cisco data. So I can see that there has been an end of sale announced on that. So it's coming up here in October. So if I was concerned, if I was kind of doing lifecycle management, I would have to be aware of this, that it's coming up, end of sales coming up. And this is where, if you want to find an alternative support instead of from the vendor, you could, go through WWS. So this is an example, end of life, end of sale. This is the PCERT information. So this can drive you, and it ties in really nicely to the next app I'll show you, which is OS Manager. And that, you can jump into these and understand that the PCERTs or security advisories that have been issued from the vendor. So be aware of that. You can check it. And then if anything is at risk, you can determine what the workaround is. Maybe there's a config workaround. Maybe you have to upgrade your operating system. The last one here is the SmartNet contract status. This device is in our lab. It is not currently under a SmartNet contract. So, I don't have support from Cisco on this device. So wanted to show you that. The final thing we're going to talk about in Device Manager, I'm actually going to show you in another system because, again, I don't have much Cisco real hardware in this lab. I'm going to jump into this system here, and let me go to the dashboard so you can see real quick in that. let me jump into this. And just to show you that there's 45 Cisco devices in this particular lab, right? So we've built in, because device manager queries, we've extended our query capability to look at Cisco's extended hardware information. So line cards and power supplies and other things. We also have the ability to check the smart licensing status on the device itself. So we've already collected that data, and now through Gluware, you have the ability to look at that data outside of the system. So let's jump over to our data export, and let's export the Cisco extended inventory list. So let's run that and download it. And then we're going to go to the Cisco we're going to go to inventory license list. Sorry, I was missing the word license. Here we go. Run and download. And so I think I'm going to have to share my entire desktop for you guys to see this. So let me stop share for a second. Share screen. So let me double click on this one. So this is the Cisco hardware inventory. So this is going to really help, license inventory. So this is all of the Cisco hardware in our lab and exactly what licenses are, enabled or not. So I can understand, when like a feature is working or not working, or if the feature is licensed or not licensed. So this is another one that and this is the type of data you can provide to WWS, and they can look at your SmartNet contract status and what you have licensed and maybe what you need to get licensed and maybe provide an alternative. So this is again, it's quite a long list because you have each individual license on every device. So you get a full license report. Now let's look at that first report I ran, which is the Cisco hardware inventory. And as I mentioned here, you get the name and the description, and you get the serial number and the SKU and all of the other information, including things like end of sale, end of life, end of sale. And you can even scroll over here and see things like your power supplies and all kinds of other things. So these reports are tremendously helpful when it comes to understanding your inventory, understanding what's supported, understanding what you have licensed, what is going, end of sale, and all those things. So let me stop share real quick here and wrap up with I'm going to go through OS Manager pretty quickly here because it's pretty straightforward. So let me sign into this system here. While I'm changing over, so there's a question on the board. How is Gluware different from other network automation solutions like Ansible? So that's a great question. And I think, when people think network automation, sometimes they think Ansible because it's fairly well known. Ansible is a collection of small task-based automations made up of what they call playbooks. And each playbook is a set of variables that feed into a module. So you have a playbook for this and a playbook for that, right? And ultimately, you have to curate it, meaning you have to go figure out all the playbooks that are going to maybe work for you. And then, also usually, people run individual playbooks from their own laptop. So it's kind of like this engineer uses this for that. It's not unified. It's not usually well managed within organizations unless you pay a lot for it through Ansible Tower, and through Tower, you get more management, but it's still like a collection of scripts, you can think of it. And the other problem with that is that, these playbooks are really only as good as the modules that were written. And most of them are not declarative or idempotent, meaning you're often not going to be able to, it doesn't do the pre-checks and post-checks, and you may not get the same results every time. So I'd say Ansible, what we found is people generally, play around with it for a couple of years and realize they don't really move the automation needle significantly. And they look for something better, something more intelligent, something more usable for operations. All right, so with that, let's jump into the final demo here. And I'm signing into a system. I'll just point out that this one is called demo.gluware.com, and it is our test drive system. So if you wanted to kick the tires on Gluware, you could do that here. I'm going to navigate right into our OS manager to move along here. I wanted to hand it back to Ken in just a couple of minutes. With OS manager, you essentially are building plans. So you can browse your devices and all the things that you have in your network. And really what you're looking at is what operating system you're running. And you've made a decision to upgrade and downgrade and change or patch or whatever it is. So if I go back to my my Explorer here, sorry, this one, these are a bunch of plans that have been executed. So let me just double click into here. And what you see when you build a plan is you choose a set of devices, you choose the operating system or set of files that you want to put on that device. You choose what you're going to do. Is it a transfer only? Is it an upgrade? And what we're going to do here is what I've done with this particular 3650 is I have already done the part one of an upgrade, which is transfer a file onto the device. Now I'm going to take this particular plan, and we have the ability to clone the plan, and it's in a draft state. So now you see my plan editor, and see I could have dozens or hundreds of devices here. And I can see this is the vendor, and what is my next action? And so instead of transfer, I just clone this plan. I'm going to make this deploy. And essentially Gluware is doing all the hard part for you. We're running all the pre-checks, making sure connectivity to the file servers there. I'm looking at my notes because there's so many. We're validating that the operating system is compatible. We're validating that the device is in a healthy state, has the proper boot configs. I mean, dozens and dozens of pre-checks are executed. So and then you can tie in a capture of the configuration before and after as well. So let's click on a very important button we have here called Validate the Plan. We validate every plan. This is a series of pre-checks that it's looking at. And again, it's ensuring that the device is ready for the upgrade, looking at boot statements, looking at making sure the file server is reachable. By the way, Gluware provides file servers that can be distributed in your network, ensuring that the operation goes as fast and as smooth as possible. So just to look at this little log here, there's a warning because it's a licensing warning, but there's no validation errors. And basically, once you've validated your plan, you can run it or schedule it. So obviously you can schedule. So let's just hit run now and say, go for it. And you're going to get a status and a very detailed log of everything that's happening. So if I just kick this off, and we're not going to have time to probably watch this thing go all the way, but you're going to see all the interaction Gluware has. It's examining the boot system, looking at the module, looking at if it's a switch stack or not. I mean, if you think about the number of commands this is doing in seconds, this type of process could take an engineer an hour per device. And that's why operating system upgrades are one of the most painful out there. Gluware automates all of this and enables us to run highly successfully and or fail in a good way, meaning we could fail, but we'll fail in a pre-check saying you're not ready to upgrade. There's not enough room on this device, or you chose a device that's not compatible. We're going to prevent you from bricking that device and causing a problem. And really, customers love OS upgrade and the way our OS manager and the way it enables them to upgrade the operating systems. So it's running here. With that, maybe in the next one I'll just show you here that this guy I've been upgrading and downgrading numerous times. You can say they all run successfully. With that, I'm going to switch back here, stop share, and then share screen back to our presentation. And that's not the right one. Could Ken, wait, let me stop share again. I think I shared the wrong one. Share. I unfortunately had two PowerPoints open. Here we go. Okay, Ken, there we completed the demo. Let me go to full screen here.
All right.
Can you see the slides, Ken?
I can.
Great.
Can you guys see and hear me, Michael?
Yes.
Great. Hey, that was fantastic. That was exactly what we were hoping that you would be able to show, all the guys on the phone here today and on the webinar. And that exactly leads me to my just couple of quick slides on, you have this amazing data. What are you going to do with it, right? What are you going to, where are you going to go with it? And as Gluware has discovered the network devices and done all the other stuff, that's when Worldwide comes in and we raise our hand and we say, hey, you need some inventory supply? We can help you with that. You got maintenance support needs on end of life, end of service? We got that. You got too much of something? We can help you get rid of that as well. Go ahead to the next slide, Michael. So, supply gaps. We can supply the equipment that you need. Once you find that, hey, we have some holes in the network, you're going to be able to come to us for a quote. It's lifetime warranty. We'll get it back into your network, up and running, all the different flavors of the OEMs that are there. Jump to the next one, Michael.
Yep.
This is where Michael was really talking about the end of sale, end of life solution. Like now that you're not on SmartNet anymore, it's headed down that path of being legacy equipment. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to run back to the OEM and use their probably expensive maintenance solution, or are you going to exercise the Worldwide Services option, NetGuard? Again, it's custom built to your needs. It's all the different OEMs. And I'm going to tell you the last one, there's 30 to 80% cost savings across the board. So it's a 1-2 punch, if you will. You found it with Gluware, you discovered it, and now you're benefiting the savings instantly with that. Jump to the next one, please, Michael. Again, what I love to say here, NetGuard helps you extend the life of your existing network. So you don't have to worry about these ones not getting OEM support and stuff like that. And that's just where we raise our hand and we step in and we say, hey guys, we're here to help. Let's put something together and go from there. Michael, the last one I have, because I want to get to your important slide. Here's something I'll let you guys read, but I've already told you there's 30 to 80% savings. We help all different kind of companies out there, and this is just one of the solutions that we use. If there is some additional conversations that we can have separately, I can definitely take that offline with you. I can share you a presentation. I can share these other success stories with you. But I just wanted to throw one in there to say, hey guys, it works. It works and it's being used. So, but with that, I know we have 5 more minutes. I want to get to Michael's last slide because he's got an amazing offer for you guys here. So Michael, I'm going to turn off my mute to let you talk.
Okay, great. So hopefully you can hear me again still. Yeah, so the offer that we have is really enabled through our partnership with WWS, and that we're kind of naming it the assessment bundle. And it's really about how do we help to get Gluware in your hands to help you, enable you to gain some insight into what's happening in your network, and then be able to take action on it. You could take action through continuing to use Gluware to automate changes and upgrades and standard policies and other things. And you could also, with the data you're going to be able to collect in this assessment, you can turn that data over to WWS and they're going to be able to provide you a NetGuard assessment and just see how much you could save, as Ken has been sharing. So what the offer is made up of is something delivered on our Gluware Pro platform. So it runs as a SaaS. As I mentioned, all that's needed on your site is you install a lightweight virtual machine that is a Gluware secure gateway. Everything going up to the cloud is encrypted. Everything in the cloud is encrypted. And then we leverage the gateway on site to do the local communications, the SSH, into your devices. And you have 2 applications out of the gate that are going to give you a lot of insight. Device Manager, which I just showed you, which is around network discovery, inventory, ad hoc query, running the Cisco API to gather your support data. And an app which you haven't seen yet, but you're going to see next time, is around config, drift, and audit. It's going to enable you to run drifts daily or whatever frequency you like and understand what's changing on the network. And then you can use some of our example audits, or you can build your own audits very easily. Again, you didn't get to see it this time, but our audit authoring is literally CLI and regex. So anyone who can copy and paste CLI could literally build audit policies with Gluware. No coding necessary. Regex, a little bit of regex to help for variables and some other conditions is very helpful. But yeah, so what you would get is that Gluware for 30 full days, and you would be supported by WWS and Gluware to execute and enable you to get data to then figure out what your next steps are. Gluware trials or let's say Gluware free offerings are usually limited to a low number of nodes. Like our standard Gluware Pro offering is 100 nodes. Through our partnership with WWS, we've opened that up for these 30 days to allow you to use Gluware for up to 2,000 devices and use Gluware for free for 30 days to gather all that information I was talking about. The only thing I would, the kind of caveat is that if you are an enterprise and you're thinking about a network or a domain that you would like to use this on that's far greater than 2,000, and again, we have most of our customers are actually much larger than that. But again, you could choose like a domain like a single data center or a part of your WAN or even a lab to exercise this trial on. But if you are larger than 2,000, we would just engage with you and we'd support you through using Gluware Enterprise. So if that becomes a need or a requirement, we're happy to talk to you and support you doing that. And then Gluware can then help enable to have those next discussions of how you could continue using Gluware and what kind of low-hanging fruit we could help you achieve, or what agility we could do, or maybe there's other certain things you want to jump into that's kind of, let's say, outside the initial offering. And as I mentioned, this data that you're going to gather will help leverage that. WWS will essentially have just about everything they need. I don't know exactly what they need, but I think with the inventory and the SmartNet data, at least on the Cisco side, you would have probably everything you need on at least that vendor from a SmartNet standpoint to determine how they could help you save some money. So we have 1 minute left. Let's jump into the Q&A. And so there's no additional questions besides the question around Ansible. Hopefully I answered that one. I would invite anyone in the last minute or two remaining, if anyone wants to put a Q&A in the chat, a question in the chat, we'll jump in and address it. Otherwise, please contact your WWS account manager. You can also, we do have one more slide here actually, which is a reminder, part 2 is Tuesday, June 8th. And just to say that also from gluware.com, you can go watch more videos. You can go see more capability. You can request a demo if you want to engage directly with Gluware and just, learn more about the product. And as I mentioned, we have something called a test drive where you just request access. We give you access to complete a series of use cases using a fully set up product. All you need is time to log in and do it. And you follow video tutorials that tell you what to do. And so if you'd like to kick the tires on Gluware to try to help you make your decision, you could go for it that way. But we look forward to hearing from you. Please contact your account manager at Worldwide or contact Gluware. And thank you very much for attending this session. Hopefully you've marked June 8th for the follow-up, hitting config drift and audit and our config management technology. Any other questions I can address? Looks like nothing else.
That was perfect, Michael. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining. We'll follow back up with you. And this was recorded, so it'll be up there. We'll have access. I know a couple of my customers had to call in, so we'll get that to you. But hey, it was great, guys. And we'll keep it going.
All right. Appreciate the invite, Ken. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.